Here's what's coming up on today's show.
Yeah.
One of the most rewarding things to see during this phase is when they come into the office or we see them virtually for our visits, you could just see them like glowing, right?
Yeah,
like there's a
relief.
happiness where maybe you could like see the stress on them before.
This is the Money Master Podcast from Brindle and Bay Wealth Management with Tori Tenhagen, Connie Davis, and certified financial planner Nick Davis.
Welcome back to the Money Master Podcast, everyone. So glad you're here joining us today. I'm Connie and joined with Nick and Tori. And today we're going to talk about the phases of retirement.
It's not just one. It's not just one thing.
I know everybody's thinking, I just want to get to this point
Yeah.
of not having a boss, not having to go to work. And when we say there's actually like multiple phases of retirement, people are often bewildered.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when you say phases of retirement, people automatically think, because we've heard it so many times, the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, right?
Yeah.
But that's not completely what we're talking about today.
Right.
It's phases within those phases.
Yeah. Those
Right.
are kind of the overarching
Yes.
And-
system, but this is a little more detailed.
And we're looking at that happen for people. Like we live vicariously through people who get to retire, and we watch this over and over again. It's like clockwork. I mean, it's a very interesting privilege we have to watch people. You know, we meet them before they retire. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years before they retire. And then to watch them go through that phase of retiring and these four phases. And, you know, some of the phases are not as exciting and as fun, but it's just life. And I often wonder what I'm going to be like when I'm older, and Tori as well. I mean, I'm 46, but it's like, man, you know, 20 years from now, just we know so many people and we're watching them live their lives. And I feel like we're a part of so many lives.
Well, that's what I was going to say. When you consider what our retirements will look like, you know, we see people handle each phase a little differently. Like some people are so happy to be done with work. And then some people make it a couple months and they're like, I'm miserable and bored. Like what, you know, like everyone kind of handles each phase a little bit different. And so it begs the question, what will it be like when we retire?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, you said that before, like you can't know it until you're there. You don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen.
I do feel like I take a lot of mental notes, though. In the same way, I found myself watching our kids' grandparents, right? So Nick and I's parents, how they grandparent. And I asked myself, do I want to be like that? Do I want to do that? Oh, I don't want to do that, but I do want to do this. I feel like I do the same thing watching, you know, people through retirement as well.
Yeah. Well, your dad's a good example of a retiree. He retired early, and he
loves
He doesn't
life.
regret it at all.
No.
I mean, I think he was 60, 61, maybe when he retired, maybe 62.
Yeah, and I talked to him last week, and I was like, hey, you know, do you want to go to so-and-so? And he's like, oh, man, we've got so many things going on. We're going here, then we're home for a few days, then we're going there, then we're doing this. I was like, wow, you guys are busy.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, we're having a great time.
And if you think it's expensive, it's not. They actually do it very, very affordably, the things that they do.
Yeah.
And I mean, it helps when your family has ATVs you can ride and stuff, but he used to provide the ATVs, you know,
Right.
when we were younger. So, yeah, very, very cool. So let's get into each phase.
So phase one, the honeymoon phase. That's
The
fun-
honeymoon
That's the fun
phase.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's the, I don't have to get up and go to work tomorrow.
Right. Every day is a Saturday. What do you want to do today?
Yes.
Yeah.
That lots of emotional highs, right? That sense of, like you said, freedom. I don't have to get up at a certain time.
Yeah.
The alarm clock doesn't have to go off.
Yep.
We watched, you know, him retire before her, maybe, and he'll get into cooking dinner for her and really take it seriously. And
I met with a client yesterday who he's going to retire a little bit before her, and we were talking about their budget, and, you know, she was like, yeah, we're going to need more. He'll be bored. Like, you know, like he's going to be spending money. He's bored. Sometimes it's often like that. Like one may retire a little bit earlier and have some time at home, or they're settling in, finding projects to do.
Well, yeah, typically if the husband is retiring first, the wife has her honeydew list ready
Yeah.
to keep
That
him
too.
busy for a while.
Yeah. What projects do I need him working on?
yeah, so there's this emotional high and this excitement about all the opportunities that you have and the exploring these new roles and the new identities. And then there becomes kind of like that practical adjustment, right? And, you know, maybe people start doing these early, maybe they wait a little longer, but like the budgeting, balancing that new freedom they have with a purpose and
well, we tell people a lot, this honeymoon phase honestly is when we'll end up meeting with them a little bit more when we're doing their financial planning, because it feels a little bit like, how did income feel this year? You didn't have a paycheck. Did we get enough off? Like, what is that feeling like? Because there's some ironing out.
Yeah. And actually several years in, so let's just say 3, 4, 5 years into retirement, we see that people start to go into that next phase, and it could be different. It's not really based on time so much. It's when we'll hear people say things like, this has been fun, but I can only see us doing this particular, type of travel a few more years. And then we're kind of, we'd rather do this and that. And so your desires actually change.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that we've noticed that happens during this honeymoon phase is people's health actually improves for many of them.
Yeah.
Their jobs have been so stressful, and maybe it's caused them to be on certain medications. And now that stress is gone, many people, man, I'm off of these certain meds. I've lost weight.
Or just having time to focus on your nutrition. I mean, I think some people stay so busy working, they're like, I've just been eating so healthy and I'm enjoying cooking. And they come in, they've lost 10 pounds since we saw them 3 months ago. And you're like, wow, you look great. Because they've got the time.
They're prioritizing things.
One of the most rewarding things to see during this phase is when they come into the office or we see them virtually for our visits, you could just see them like glowing, right?
Yeah,
like there's a
relief.
happiness where maybe you could like see the stress on them before.
And if you're not retired yet, that's what you're thinking about. You're like, okay, this is that next phase. And maybe we're not as attached to reality. Then we move to the next phase, right? Phase 2, which is, we would call that, I guess, settling in.
Yep. Settling in. That's when it all starts
sobering up.
Yeah. We've accomplished the honey-do list. We've done some travel. And now what?
Yeah.
And that's when we kind of tell, that's what we say is, you're going to fill your time with something.
Yeah.
You're going to sit in front of the TV, or you're going to decide what you want to spend your time doing in retirement.
That daily structure. And sometimes here we'll hear people say, boy, I'll tell you what, it was difficult because I would get out of bed at noon and then I would lay on the couch till 3:00 in the afternoon. And then I would start to get my idea together, and I felt pretty bad about myself because I was not doing anything. So, that's where the struggle happens to, what's my daily structure going to be?
Yeah.
Now, Connie's grandpa wasn't that way because
I was
he
thinking,
retired.
wow, do you really hear those stories?
I do, but like this, just to be the devil's advocate here. I mean, he's 85 and was at our house 2 years ago, and it was 7 a.m. and he was tucking his shirt in, combing his hair to come out and drink coffee on like a Friday morning when he was staying during the holidays. And so like he's kept his structure, pretty solid.
Yeah.
So anyway, you start really kind of settling in. That's that phase 2. And then we got anything else to say about phase 2 before we move on to phase 3? Phase 2, what also happens is you're finding community.
Yeah.
Right.
Finding what is going to fill your time. Am I going to go do volunteer? Am I going to spend more time? Am I going to help with the grandkids? What am I going to do in this season that's going to give me some structure and fulfillment?
And that can blend between the honeymoon phase a little bit, but we also see people maintaining their financial planning and maybe even reestablishing their goals and their purpose a little bit more. They may say, this I thought was important, but this isn't as important. And now, I'm totally happy just doing this other thing.
Yeah. So that's what when I mentioned that in the honeymoon phase section of this phase is when we meet with people a lot to kind of iron some things out. We get them started on the, you're retired, here's where income's coming from, but then they come in and they go, never mind, this isn't what I wanted. We're kind of making some changes. Yeah.
It's not uncommon for people to say, I actually, knowing what I know now, I could have retired a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And many times during this phase too, they have aging parents of their own that maybe they end up having to make lifestyle adjustments in their own lives to accommodate helping take care of aging parents.
Yeah. Hey, it's Nick here. I know that many of our listeners like to read books about financial planning, and I wrote a book called A Wealth of Wisdom, and in it I share a story about my grandpa and his successful retirement. I also point out that his world, he retired in the 1990s, his world was very different from today's retiree. There are certain things that today's retiree must do to be successful in retirement. So there's no cost for the book. All you have to do is text us the word book to our office line, and I'll get that sent over to you right away. The number is 214 214-988-9178. Again, you'll text the word book to 214-988-9178. All right, so the next phase is phase 3.
The healthcare phase, where you've taken care of the aging parents, but now you're having to consider healthcare for yourself, and all of those next steps.
More doctor's appointments.
Yes.
We've always had healthcare there, but it's the
the healthcare budget's always been there. But what do you need to do to take care of yourself in this phase?
right. It's the not so glamorous things of I've got to coordinate a few more doctor's appointments, and it's like now your trips are kind of planned around when you're going to be visiting the doctor.
Yeah.
As a little bit more, and a lot of practical adjustments that start to happen, and I think people start to figure out at this point, hey, I've got extra money that's going to be left over that I could be more purposeful in my giving, or hey, I didn't earmark enough for the long-term custodial needs potentially, so I sure am glad that I'm not giving that money away.
Well, that's what I say. This is also the phase where we do have some of those hard, unfortunate conversations of, found out I'm sick and I'm going to have to plan differently.
Yeah.
This isn't what I thought, and I'm going to need more money here. And this changed our goals, and we come in and we work together to figure that out.
You bring up a good point, Tori, because you don't want to lock yourself into one way of financial planning where you're basically stuck with one thing, otherwise known as a product that you have a really difficult time getting more money from if you need to. So, it's better to be flexible and always maintain that flexibility so that if life changes, and we know life does change, we plan for as best we can, but then we're able to be adjustable if necessary.
Yep.
So that's the healthcare phase. Woohoo.
Staying flexible so you never get bent out of shape.
That's one of the Connie jokes.
Hey, I heard that on a podcast the other day.
Okay. Sounds like you heard that in church, maybe. Blessed are the flexible, for they'll never be bent out of shape. Phase 4 is the solo years.
Yep. This is
solo years.
These last two are they're not as fun ones for sure, but the years when you're looking at life on your own, that will happen to most of us as we have a spouse pass away, and then it's all the decisions of did a pension fall off, where's money coming from, all those logistics things that happen, and then also the emotional side.
The practical side to this, though, is I think we should be thinking about this, because it doesn't mean that you're trying to sour your earlier years, but what you don't want to do is not have community and connections. Mm-hmm. That's the hardest thing, and the worst thing is entering that solo phase and not having a good relationship with your children, or
having community, people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. And so that's a big concern for me, for people, because there's a lot of loneliness out there. And I think that's the hardest thing that nobody talks about, is ending up not having those connections. So thinking about it earlier, building those friendships, those relationships.
And this is a part where having a financial plan and knowing that is inevitable in some form or fashion, so that you're not going to make rash decisions when it happens. Yeah. Because I've met with someone recently who had that happen. They made decisions because they had to, and it's not where they wanted to be, but they were emotional and they did what they thought they had to do, and now it's not what they wanted.
And if you're younger in life, if you're towards the end of your career, you might think it's harder to make relationships, and it is, than when you were in your 20s. As it gets into your 30s and 40s, it becomes more difficult to make friendships. However, something unique happens when you retire, and that is, it's kind of like being in college again.
Everybody's retired.
Everybody wants to meet each other, and I believe it's possible to make good friendships in retirement. In fact, I'm meeting with a family today, this afternoon, that they spend a lot of their time in Florida, and they've just made some really good new friendships since they've been retired. And these people are kind of like family to us, but we've watched people be able to do that at that phase. So it does get easier to make friendships earlier in retirement, more so than it is when you're in your 50s and you're at work and maybe you're not, because everybody's all concerned about their kids and raising their families, and so that's what makes it hard. And you can also start to get active too, and try to stay active, and really make those connections. I know, like in the cycling group that I ride with for bikes, they're very close people, very close to each other. Same thing with people who play pickleball. Like there's some really good relationships there that form over time, and maybe at your church for sure. And so those are just as equally important part of your financial plan. So there you have it. Those are the 4 phases that we want to have kind of in our mind as we're planning and moving forward through each phase of retirement.
Well, thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate you, and we hope that you found this information helpful as you're thinking about your own life, maybe where you are in each of one of these phases or will be in the future. And if you'd like to chat with someone on our team or have questions about your own specific phase of retirement, you can find us at brindleandbay.com or reach out at 214-988-9178. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we encourage you to share it with a friend or leave a comment or review. Thanks so much.
Hey, Nick Davis here. You know, we have a vision to create a rewarding, fulfilling retirement journey for every individual. And we do that through creating well thought out financial plans. Now, if you want to create the next chapter experience filled with calmness and clarity for your life, then our team would love to visit with you about that. It all starts with a 15-minute discovery call that you can set up right there on your phone or your computer. All you have to do is click on the Let's Talk button that's on our website, brindleandbay.com. So you'll go to brindleandbay.com and click Let's Talk. Let's get the conversation started with a short phone call. We would welcome an opportunity to meet you.
Nick Davis is an investment advisor representative of Brindle and Bay Financial Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This show is for informational purposes only. Any exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered financial advice or recommendation to buy or sell a financial vehicle. You should consult a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before taking any action. This program is not endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. Insurance licensed in Texas, number 1188639. Brindle and Bay Wealth Management is affiliated with Brindle and Bay Financial Advisors.